It's the clash of the titans, the battle of the Latin American heavyweights. Incumbent President Jair Bolsonaro faces off with previous two-term popular president and released from prison Lula da Silva this Sunday in what will surely be an epic election. And there covering it is Craig Pasta Jardula from the Convo Couch. He's there in Brazil now. Pasta, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here. So this is actually, look, a lot of elections happen all the time, all around the world. This one is really, really interesting to have the sitting incumbent president who's been fairly popular with certain groups of people and considered sort of populist in a way, takes on that sort of vibe a bit, going up against another one a leftist, Lula da Silva, who has been also sort of categorized as like the populist left-wing. So you've got the left-wing populist against the right-wing populist going, both of them the former president and the incumbent, which is a really big, that's huge right there. Usually the incumbent has an advantage. In this case, Lula da Silva was a two-term extremely popular president. This is really, truly a clash of the titans.
Yeah, I mean, this is like the Bernie Sanders, Donald Trump event that we never got. It's happening right here in Brazil, and it's quite exciting. I think a lot of people think that it might end in the first round. The way it works here in Brazil is that if you get the simple majority, 50% plus one, then you wrap it up and we don't go to a second round. And like you said, Lula is a two-term president, very, very popular, known for championing the poor. You know, worked with groups like MST, which is like a workers movement out here that started in the 1980s that has 1.5 million strong, over 400,000 people who fight for their indigenous land and small farmers. You know, he formed a political bond with this group before, and he's always been known as one to like help the poor. And that's what he's doing right now, Kim. He's staying on message. He's out there saying, I want every Brazilian to wake up, have a cup of coffee, 2 square meals a day, and a roof over their head. And I don't want our kids to have to split an egg with another child and eat crackers. So enough is enough. And that's a problem right now in Brazil. There's a lot of poverty here. However, Bolsonaro now, the incumbent, is looked at as like an anti-globalist, anti-elitist, populist guy, took on the WHO, and it's going to be interesting because I don't think it's going to be wrapped up in the first round. I think this is definitely going for a second round. That's just my personal opinion. You never can tell.
Right.
But
there's 11. There's 11 people in the race right now. And so you need to have the simple majority of at least 51% of the vote in order to be declared the winner. And so the thinking is that could happen with one of them, one of these two. They're the two main ones, of course, out of the 11. Or it could be that the others get some votes and split it, and neither of these two cross that 51% threshold. Who is the most likely at this point in the election? I mean, you're only hours away from this election. Who at this point is the most likely to cross that 51% threshold?
I think it would have to be Lula. I mean, obviously, this is a poor country, and a lot of people look to Lula for the work he's done before, moving people out of extreme poverty. But like I said, I don't think he's going to cross that finish line. But if there's anybody who has a chance, it's going to be Lula. I'm predicting that Lula doesn't get enough, but is in the lead after the first round and will win slightly in the second round. That's just my personal opinions. That's from talking to people on the streets. And you know us, Kim, we tell you all the time. Yeah. We talk to waiters, bartenders, cab drivers, Uber drivers. We talk to everybody. We're in a strong Lula stronghold over here. This is Sao Paulo. However, there's a lot of people who believe that Lula is corrupt. They believe the marketing out there, Operation Car Wash, and they think that Bolsonaro deserves a second term.
Yeah. So let's talk about the Operation Car Wash and Lula da Silva and what happened with that. So he served 2 terms, I believe, from 2003 to 2017. Is that right? Somewhere around that time stretch. And was then later, there was a big, tell us about Operation Car Wash and how that put him in prison for over a year.
Yeah.
And others as well.
Well, I haven't researched Operation Car Wash in a while, but I am familiar with it from several years ago because I did follow it. And Glenn
Yeah.
Greenwald did some amazing work on this. And pretty much they just accused him of corruption and,
Right.
taking bribes and having, I guess, residential areas or I don't know what it was exactly, but in other words, he was accused of taking bribes and he was jailed for it. But then as he was in jail, there were some leaks. Somebody got a hold of some phone transcripts and it found out that these particular judges, and there was also some evidence that it was linked to the State Department here in America. And I don't know if it's necessarily they wanted Bolsonaro, but I know they definitely didn't want Lula at the time. And when he was in jail, these phone calls got leaked and it clearly showed that he was set up. He should have never been in jail in the first place. And that's what people are talking about right now. A lot of people who like Bolsonaro, they're like, oh my God, Bolsonaro. But I don't think Bolsonaro should have been in office in the first place, because had they not, thrown Lula in jail, he would be the president right now and we wouldn't be having this discussion. So since he's been set free, there's been more news out there that there's these new corruption charges they want to go after him with. A lot of people still believe the marketing, but that's where we stand right now. He's been cleared. He's out. Yeah. He's running in this election. And it's hours away, like you said.
Yeah, it's really interesting because Lula da Silva is on the left and Jair Bolsonaro is on the right. And Jair Bolsonaro has been, compared to Trump regularly. But what's really interesting about this is Lula da Silva actually has a lot in common with him as well. I mean, he was very anti-establishment for the people. Again, like you mentioned, the globalists didn't want him there. And ultimately went after him and some others who were in his realm and in his way of thinking, and landed and they went after them criminally, the same way that we're seeing right now, many in the establishment trying to go after Donald Trump, and they successfully were able to throw him in prison for a while. It was later then, as you mentioned, they found that there was nothing there, and that conviction has been annulled, but he did spend over 500 days in prison. And so it's interesting because it is the establishment that went after the anti-establishment guy, got him thrown in prison, extremely popular leader that they just did not want. And they figured out a way to try to silence him. It didn't work and he's back. But at the same time, Jair Bolsonaro takes on a lot of those same populist, more along the lines of Donald Trump, like his actual policies or platform or rhetoric is more in line with Donald Trump, and also is not that liked by the globalists or the establishment. I mean, you've got basically Brazil somehow is able to have these two anti-establishment candidates, one from the left, one from the right, which is really interesting. And probably no matter how it goes down, whoever wins, I think, and if it ends up being Lula da Silva, I think it would be really interesting to see how Western media treats him, because Western media has been really harsh on Jair Bolsonaro. So will they treat Lula the same, do you think?
That's a very interesting question. And I think the thing you hit on the nose is right off the bat, when it comes to the rhetoric, right? That is Jair Bolsonaro. That is equivalent to almost Donald Trump. When you talk to a Bolsonaro supporter and you ask them, what's your biggest criticism about Bolsonaro? They say this all the time. I wish he would just shut up. The stuff that comes out of his mouth already. I mean, it's the same thing with Donald Trump. It's like, why did he say it like that? He just put himself in hot water. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of questions about how they're going to be treated. Lula was really strong when I talked about this group, the MST, which is this labor movement out here, and getting indigenous people their land, getting all these private farmers their land rights. Bolsonaro has been accused of handing over this land to like multinational corporations.
Right.
However, now we see with the situation, I mean, Bolsonaro is according to COVID protocols and everything, other than once again saying stupid stuff like don't take the vaccine, it will turn you into an alligator, which is like, come on, Bolsonaro, what the hell is wrong with you? He's been probably one of the strongest when it comes to a pushback against those protocols.
Right.
And Lula right now, it's surfacing right now. He has this relationship with the World Economic Forum. There's pictures with him and Klaus Schwab. So it really is. It's like, if I had to guess who the empire might want, I couldn't put my finger on it, because they both are like these populists that have these things. I don't know which one they would want right now, because a lot of people feel that that the empire or the powers that be, the globalists, will be happy with Lula right now. Because if
Right.
you talk to a lot of Lula supporters, they wanted mandates, they wanted lockdowns, and Bolsonaro would not give them that. In fact, he gave out COVID kits. He went against the grain. So it would be really hard to guess on who they want. Are they going to stand behind, the multinational corporations, which Bolsonaro has just gifted them, or do they want Lula over there?
The WEF guy.
Exactly, the WEF
Wow.
guy. So
I mean, that's why this election is so interesting. That is why this is, truly the clash of the Titans in a lot of ways, in more ways than one, because not only have these guys been sort of this, at least taking on that anti-establishment, the talking points, and maybe truly believing in many of them. But you're right, they do have behind them the big forces that always are behind our politics, where one side it's the corporate interests, right? The big money corporate interests that are backing Bolsonaro. They like his policies of more of the laissez-faire way of going about things. Let's just make some money. We're not going to care about this, thing, the climate change stuff. We're going to worry about making some money. And then on the other hand, the WEF, which is more about global control, it definitely has more of a, maybe there's more interests that are coming from a different vein with WEF. It's not, and we even see that sort of play out here in the States, right? You've got guys like Elon Musk, for example, who speaks out against the credit score system, like the social credit score, the ESG score that they've got. You've got him speaking out against it and speaking out against like the WEF. You have these like large corporate, multi-mega billionaires. And then you also have the WEF people. It's like even on the wealthy, powerful in that realm, there's two sides and they battle each other a bit.
Yeah.
So,
and if this is the battleground for it, because like you said, it's like, Bolsonaro went to the WHO and he told them, if you change these international health regulations, Brazil is out. I'm not playing games here. Brazil is out. And a lot of people look up to him like, wow, he's taking on the globalist.
Right.
But then on the other hand, the multinational corporations, Brazil is so rich with resources here. It's like there shouldn't be people starving on the streets like there are. There shouldn't be people just out, in the Amazon, having their land exploited. And so it's just one of those things you just got to kind of guess of what's going on. I tell you this much, Kim, if I had to vote, third party. I ain't going near these two.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is a tough one because there's so much. It's like, why can't they be combined? Why can't we get somebody who is against the WEF and against the big corporate interests that are trying to buy off our politicians? Why can't we get somebody who cares about the poor, yet also cares about making money, and freedoms, so that people can have the freedom to do business, but also live their lives, have their jobs, not be forced into mandates and whatnot. Like, why can't we have all of this combined into one person? Why does it have to be split between the two? But it is interesting to see in this election, at least Brazilians, it'd be interesting to see how this would pan out here in the United States if we have these two sort of characters going up against each other. What do people care more about? Do they care more about stopping the big money corporate interests, or do they care more about stopping the WEF?
It would just be split down the pipe. I think there's a lot of ignorance here too as well. I don't think Lula's going to usher in mandates, but I do think that if he does become president, you'll see a large buy and a large amount of vaccines come on over. I don't know what he'll do with federal workers or anything like that. He hasn't given any implications that he will enact mandates. To me, it seems he's a lot like Donald Trump in some ways, where he's pro-vaccine but anti-mandate. That DeSantis kind of feeling. So I don't know. Here's the thing, what I've been struggling with, and you know how I feel about these situations. The number one cause of death in the world, though, is hunger. You know what I'm saying? So I think I've found an area where I think it might supersede the whole WEF, the WHO situation. I know that a lot of people are afraid that, Lula will usher in the QR code system. But, at the end of the day, him championing the poor, I think that's so important because he did do that. So I think I would have to give him the edge. But it's just like team sports, Kim. It's just, oh, my Lord, the rhetoric is so much like 2020. When you talk to these people, when I was talking to some of the Lula supporters, I was saying, well, you're saying that Bolsonaro didn't do anything with vaccines. He didn't implement social distancing. He didn't mask up your kids. And you're upset by that. But, these corporations, they're like kind of, criminal and they're very bad. Oh, yeah, but we believe in science. It's like, where did you get that from? That seems like it came right out of the playbook in 2020 in the United States. It is so much alike. It's eerie sometimes when you're out in the street talking to these people.
Well, and they're even talking about now, like, will Bolsonaro step down? Will he leave office? Or, I mean, it's like identical to Donald Trump. I'm just like, are we really doing this again? As I'm reading, the mainstream news. Oh, will Bolsonaro, will he actually leave?
Yeah, well, I said that on when I was on the show yesterday. I said
on Rising.
Simple, on Rising. And I said it yesterday. I said, listen, this is the same rhetoric we heard, before from the media and everybody else. They want you to concentrate on these things rather than look what's going on with the actual elections. Now, Bolsonaro was pointed out here, the election system, which is a DRE system, a direct recording electronic device. There's no paper ballot that you hand mark. You actually get your IDs and you step up to a computer. You make 5 votes for the 5 candidates that are the 5 positions that are running. And the machine at the end of the day will spit out information. Now, it's an open source system is what they've been telling us. We've already met with election officials. We're going to meet with some tomorrow. They said there's 10 audits that they go through, that it's very secure. There's no air gap. Nothing's connected to the internet. This is what they're telling us. And Bolsonaro is kind of pointing out these things, that how can you trust a full computerized system with no paper ballot trail? However, it's a little bit different from Bolsonaro and Donald Trump. With Donald Trump had a lot more complaints and reasons and actual he was more justified because they were changing the system. Bolsonaro has already won under this same system over here.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a little bit different, but that's what he's pointing out. And everybody's taking that, like, the Bernie Sanders on the floor. We will not accept a military coup if Bolsonaro doesn't leave. It's like, shut up. It's like, you don't want people looking at the system. You don't want people understanding the difference between open source and proprietary software, because that's the issues we have here. So you try to distract us with all this guff, and it does make your eyes roll when you hear this stuff. If Bolsonaro loses, I will predict that he will step away, upset and angry, but he will bring up those grievances so he can run again, just like I think Donald Trump will run again.
Yeah, probably. It just seems like maybe in Brazil we're going to have like this. The thing I don't like about Lula coming back a bit is that he did serve already 2 terms, a long time. So it's like at some point you'd have to maybe hand power over to the new generation of people or something, but maybe they're going to have this sort of revolving, it's going to go between Bolsonaro and Da Silva.
Yeah, I disagree with that. And I don't mean to cut you off, but I before we go on to anything else, I'd like to talk to you about that. I think we mentioned this once before. In Latin America and in the United States, if there's a strong leader and somebody that they trust and they want him in power, I don't see there's anything wrong with that. As long as someone's fairly elected, I'm cool with that. You know what I'm saying? I believe.
So you don't mind if they would be like leaders for 40 years? That doesn't bother you?
If the people trusted them.
Yeah.
Listen, if the people trust them, and a lot of these people want strong leaders. That's why I think Ortega is still the president in Nicaragua. You know what I'm saying? And if they like a person and they believe he's a strong leader and they trust him, to be the leader of their country, I am cool with that. I'm okay.
Yeah,
with
I don't know if I just don't know if I trust the election system enough to say
that's something different. That's
to think that a person can win for however many terms over and over and over again. So I'm a bit skeptical of it. I would like to see power being forced to transfer at least somewhat, just to ensure that in case that's the system, there's like at least some sort of safeguard against that. But that is a topic for another day. Pasta.
Yes.
Thank you so much. You guys have been doing great coverage there in Brazil and everywhere. You guys are all over the place, always covering all of these events, which is really awesome. So we're going to be following you at the Convo Couch, keeping up on this election. So I'm going to tell everybody, head over there because you guys are going to have all the coverage on election day. You guys are going to be doing all of that. So this is a big one. This is an interesting election to pay attention to. So head over to the Convo Couch, watch it with, get your popcorn ready because I know I'm going to be. All right. So thank you so much,
for having me on.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Kim.